Hi everyone, it's Ange here. Thank you for tuning in to Starlight Wellness. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Ange and I'm an astrologer and energy wellness coach. I specifically focus on astrology related to ascension. And today I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Gemini and the summer solstice energies that are coming and what we can do about it. And I'm going to split it up in 3 sections. So the first part is going to be the astrological kind of forecast. The second part is going to go deep into all the planetary changes, the retrogrades, the summer solstice energy, and the eclipse seasons that are coming up this summer as well. And the last part is going to be kind of like an intuitive summary of the energy that I've intuitively downloaded and kind of give you guys an overall picture about what's happening. So thank you for everyone who's tuning in. I'm just going to share this page to a few groups and I'm going to play some music in the background while I do that. And the music that I'm going to be playing is very specific. It is related to the divine feminine energies that are really potent right now. So today is June 13th, 2018. The number 13 is so important because it relates to the divine feminine energy. The number 13 relates to the 13 new moon cycles that we have every year. And so the number 13 is so potent, and it's even more potent that we have a new moon on the 13th. So it's amazing what we have going on energetically in terms of how this divine goddess energy is pulling through. Let me know if you can hear me properly or if my reception is coming online properly. I just got a new computer, so I'm really grateful that everything should be working and functioning for this forecast. And like I said, I'm going to play some divine music in the background, and I'm just going to share this out for about maybe 1 minute to a few groups, and then I'm going to get into the astrological forecast for everyone. And feel free to bring in any of your questions about the energy. I'm going to try to streamline through your questions as well afterwards. So thank you. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. All right. As one we her heart beats with alone as one. As one we join with her, our mother. As one we feel her sacred song. As one we touch her, as one we hear her, her heart beats with our own as one. As one we walk this earth together. As one we sing to her our song. As one we love her. As one we hear her. Her heart beats with our own as one. As one we join with her our Mother. As one we feel her sacred sound. As one we touch her. As one we hear her. Her heart beats with our as one we walk this earth together. Alrighty, so far I got all the groups in line and online for this discussion. Thank you for all of you who are tuning in. If you haven't seen me for a while, it's because I've been down under the weather. I had a cold and my throat and my nose was quite stuffy, so I wasn't able to speak. And I actually received the information that I got an energetic upgrade to my voice. So now my voice is actually an activator. So when you follow my energetic updates, you actually might get an activation just from me speaking. So I have a lot to share since I haven't really spoken for quite some time, and I'm really happy to present to you this awesome information of the new moon in Gemini that we have going on. So if you've watched my past videos, I specifically talked about the astrological moon cycles that have changed, and they're now focused more on 13 new moons, which is representative of the goddess energy, the divine feminine energy. And this is the new calendar that we kind of should focus on. And there's no coincidence that suddenly, once I received that information last month, I have now been aligned to the timing has been like ideal. We have 2 new moons on the 13th. So June 13th and July 13th will be new moons. So the potency of this message is so important because it's the divine feminine energy coming back to the planet. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone who's tuning in. I'll definitely put the song where I got it in the comments below. Aloha, Gemini birthday tomorrow. Hello. Yes, happy solar return for all you Geminis out there. So I hope you like my sacred space. It's very colorful. It's very creative. I've got my artwork behind me. And it actually has to do with that Gemini energy, which is very playful. It's childlike. It's flexible. It's a mutable sign. And it has to do with communication, but in a creative way. So it's not as much creativity as Pisces, let's say, which is a water sign and very artistic, but Gemini is very creative in how it speaks. And so I'm going to get into how that is important to this energetic forecast soon. Happy birthday, Gudav. You have July 13th. This July 13th is actually a partial solar new moon eclipse. So it's going to be a very potent day for you. Hello everyone who's tuning in. So I actually wrote a board for today, as I normally do, about the topics that I'm going to talk about. We have Gemini at 22 degrees. So we have both the sun and the moon in Gemini at 22 degrees, and they're in conjunction. So we have a huge Gemini energy focus. This is why I talk about this is a huge energetic kind of energy. However, during this time and during the next transit until the next new moon on July 13th, we will have several retrogrades happen. So I'm going to get into what the retrogrades are all about. And also on June 21st, we will have the summer solstice right before the eclipses, as always. But the summer solstice changes the energy. And it's going to give us this kind of boost of energy before the eclipse season. And I'm going to get into that. So those are some of the topics I'm going to discuss today. And kind of do it in 3 sections, like I said before. first the astrology. Secondly, I'm going to get into kind of the retrogrades, the planetary actions that are happening, all that kind of other stuff besides the new moon. And then I'm going to get into the third part, which is going to be like the intuitive, energetic forecast. And that will be more of the healing and intuitive knowledge that I have personally received about this transit. So thank you for everyone. Thank you about my paintings. Yes. Thank you for everyone who's joining in. Please let me know if you're receiving this message properly and that my video feed is doing well. I'm hoping that it is receptive and I can go forward properly. Looks like it is so far. So I'm going to continue. So Gemini new moon, it's all to do with communication, creative communication. And also it has to do with the twins. So it has to do with love, relationships, how we communicate to one another, our perceptions about other people, what we say and think about other people, our perceptions about ourselves. So there's actually a quote. I have my notes. So there's actually a quote I wrote down that came to my head about the energy overall of Gemini. And I just thought it would be really, really important to mention this quote because it kind of relates to what is going on with this energy, with this astrological new moon. And it says here, becoming who you were before who they told you to be. So I'm going to repeat that. Becoming who you were before who they told you to be. And that has to do with that duality that Gemini is all about, creating that new identity. Because Gemini also rules childhood, also rules that creative playfulness. So it's that identity that we're being asked to tap into. We're being asked to tap into that playful, childlike identity, that innocence. That is what our true nature is, that innocent nature, before who other people told us what we should be. And so that's why there is a split in identity. And it's not like bipolar or multiple personalities or any kind of mental disorder. It has to do with clearing our subconscious minds of all the patterns and beliefs and the systems that have been imposed upon us that told us we were something else. And we got to go back to that place, to that mindset in our hearts and know that childhoodness, that is our true authenticity. And that's where the dual identity is coming into play. It's asking us to heal that part of ourselves. And it's actually quite potent because the sun and the moon is both in 22 degrees, and 22 has this extra additional numerological sequence to it that has to do with duality, with two, with partnerships. But it's also the partnerships within ourselves, our own identity. Who do we say that we are to the world? Who do we say that we are to ourselves? Are we actually being authentic? Are we taking off our masks and being true to the people around us? So like I said, Gemini has to do with communication, playful, childlike communication. It's flexible. It's a mutable sign. It is able to change perceptions. It's able to change beliefs. It's able to change identity. So this new moon is a perfect time for us to restore and remember the identity of who we were before everyone told us what we should be. I hope that point gets across. And like I said, 13, the number 13, so today is the 13th, and there's no coincidence that June 13 is a new moon, and it's so potent because it's telling us that the 13 new moon cycles that govern our calendar is the new energy that we're ready to create. And there's 2 new moons that are coming up on the 13th this year. There's no coincidence about that. 13 governs the goddess. 13 governs that feminine energy, and it's healing. It's very, very healing. So what's connected to the moon? This moon, the new moon in Gemini, has Mercury at 2 degrees. It has Chiron at 2 degrees connected. Mercury has to do with communication, about expression. Chiron has to do with healing. And it's in opposition to Saturn. So the new moon is actually opposing, Mercury, which is close to the moon, is opposing Saturn, which has to do with communication. So it's pushing us, in spite of being childlike and playful and colorful and creative, it's pushing us to take the leadership in being authentic and returning to our true selves. So that's kind of where that's going. And that's why Chiron is also connected at 2 degrees, because it's trying to heal that. And it's trying to heal that through our expression, which is so amazing. It's giving us an opportunity to finally express ourselves and tell other people who we are. And Saturn is kind of like disciplinary. So it's kind of saying, like, do it in a leadership way. Be a leader of who you are. Be a leader of your identity. So that's how that's kind of going. Stephanie says, feeling it. Awesome. And crazy synchronicities. Synchronicities, yeah, they're coming up for a lot of people. What else is going on? So we got the summer solstice and all the retrogrades that are coming up. So this is kind of huge, okay? It's going to be like, this new moon is the final new moon that we can actually create a new identity for ourselves. We can create a new way people perceive us. We can take the leadership role and express ourselves to our family publicly. Even what we say to ourselves about who we are. And it's in the sign of Gemini, which is very flexible at changing. So it's a great time to create changes in that manner. And before the retrograde hits next month, this is kind of like the last push that you're going to be able to create that new identity. It's giving us like this kind of like the universe and the cosmos is giving us this beautiful push and beautiful energy to kind of flow into that divine, authentic truth of our identities. So that's a huge, huge message. And it's because Gemini has to do with flexibility of thoughts, beliefs, perceptions. All of those things are changing. So allow yourself to change your perception about yourself and about others. And then the summer solstice is going to happen on the 21st of June, in about a week, 1 week away from now. And that has to do with the change of seasons. So it's really a potent time of change. We're getting this energetic influx of change. We're getting an opportunity to change. We're getting the opportunity to take ownership of ourselves, of our identity, and to push through with this change with as much grace and ease as possible, but also to communicate it. So we're being asked to communicate who we are. And that's that duality that Gemini holds, right? It also asks us to communicate to our partners. Like if you're in a love relationship or in a divine partnership, the communication with our partners will be very important as well. And I'm going to get into that, into the intuitive part of the astrology. So the summer solstice is going to be kind of like the last time we're going to get this opportunity to change before all the retrogrades really come into play. So there's going to be a lot of retrogrades during the eclipses in July and August. And these retrogrades will be not a time for us to express as much anymore, but we're going to be healing and internalizing things. So if there's a time for us to create a new project, to create something different, time is now. Because when the eclipses come, it will be kind of like the energy will be kind of condensing. Okay, it's going to be condensing more internally, and it won't be so much externally focused. So I'm going to talk about all of the planets that are going in retrograde now. So on June 18th, just in 5 days, we have Neptune in Pisces that is going to go retrograde. Neptune in Pisces all has to do with escapism, drugs and alcohol, abuse of drugs, escaping through sex, escaping through not looking at who you are, not trying to heal parts of you. Mars will go retrograde in Aquarius. It's already in Aquarius. It's going to go retrograde on June 26th. So again, just a week later, we're going to have Mars going retrograde as well. And Jupiter is already retrograde in Scorpio. Saturn is already retrograde in Capricorn. And on July 4th, Chiron, the wounded healer, which is in Aries, will also go retrograde. Luckily, Mercury will not go retrograde until July 26th, and that will be at the eclipse. So we kind of have this kind of break until the next new moon. And that will be in Cancer on July 13th, another 13. So this next month, literally, is our kind of like last opportunity to kind of get out and express who we are. When the eclipses come, July 27th in Aquarius and August 11th in Leo, it's going to be a time of transition. So after that, this first wave of influx, the eclipses shift the energy every 6 months. So we are going to go back and look what happened 6 months ago in February. And we will even go back and look what happened last August, 6 months before. And we might have to review things because there's going to be so many retrogrades happening on the collective consciousness. So this affects everyone individually. other than that, we have a beautiful gateway opportunity, energetically speaking, with this Gemini energy. It's our last opportunity to speak up, to actually say who we are. And so now I'm going to get into the third portion of this discussion, which is more of the intuitive and the healing guidance that I've received to share about this energetic transit. So when we talk about Gemini, we talk about duality. So I'm going to give a few analogies. So as I was talking about, I wanted to get into the intuitive analysis and forecast for this energetic new moon in Gemini. And as I was saying, when we talk about Gemini, we talk about duality because they represent the twins and represents communication between individuals. And so I wanted to give an analogy that would help understand some of the healing aspects that are coming up at this time for this new moon, and how we are shifting and changing our perceptions and beliefs and social constructs in our reality, and how that is affecting our communication and shifting how we think and speak about others. So what is happening overall is that this Gemini energy is coming in to heal and give us kind of an opportunity to heal how we speak about other people and how we speak to each other, because there's a mirroring effect happening with Gemini. So everything we say or think about another person is actually a reflection of ourselves on some level. And so that's really coming up to the surface with this energy at this time. And so it's really coming into the collective consciousness to shift our perceptions, which a Gemini can do because it rules the mental thinking body of life. And it's a mutable sign, so it is flexible in how it thinks and perceives. And it allows us to be able to shift our perspective collectively. And so I'm going to give this analogy. Let's say, for example, just hypothetically speaking, we have a guy named John. He's an investigator, and he's just getting the opinion of certain people. Person A says that John, who's being investigated, John B, I don't know, is not a great guy, and that he hears, cats and dogs screaming and crying in his house. Person B says, I've heard John, I've heard some bad stories from his workplace because I know someone he works with, and that person told me, that he's a really bad employee and he's a really bad guy at work, so he must be a bad guy. And then person C says, yeah, I know John, I've known him for 2-3 years now, and he's a great guy. He seems like he'd do anything for his friends. So what we're getting from this analogy is that every person who had these opinions about John is actually reflecting something within themselves. And what is happening is that we're realizing that now. It's coming to the surface that our words, what we say about other people, is a reflection of ourselves. And that's kind of like that mirroring effect that's coming into play, and it's really healing. It's healing because, first of all, we're understanding the power of our word and how it is actually a reflection of our own consciousness, because we are one consciousness, and that's why it's a reflection of ourselves, not of John. It has nothing to do with John. It actually has to do with the people. So now people who are investigators, people who are gossipers, or people who are I don't know, working in those industries are going to have a really hard time, because the old system, the old social constructs that we've kind of been attuned to, had to do with a lot of gossip, what people think and say. But now we're learning as a collective consciousness that all this chatter that had to do with Gemini, and Gemini on the dark side of things likes to tell fibs, you know, not really tell the truth. Sometimes that's the darker side of the duality. And we're learning that in essence isn't working anymore, and that it really isn't effective, and it really isn't the truth, and it's not an effective way to discern the truth about another person, and that it can be very you know challenging for people working in those industries, let's say, okay? Because they're going to have to shift the way that they work. And it's already available in our consciousness and our social constructs. Like, we already know that the human condition is very subliminal, and it has its own tendencies to see through its own lenses and its own ego. So all those people A, B, and C are, kind of seeing through their own ego, and they're not really seeing John for who he is. And the only way to actually get to the truth, if an investigator was actually getting to the truth, he'd have to sit down John, and each individual he's asking the opinion of. That might cause conflict, but that's the only way to get to the truth, is by mirroring the individuals with each other, to realize whether in fact is that individual reflecting just their ego and themselves, or are they actually saying something essential and true about John. And that's what we call hearsay in a courtroom. Like, this is called hearsay. And so we already know in the legal world that the human opinion can be subjective. And so it's not always considered valuable. And so what we're doing right now with this Gemini energy is that we're learning about this, and we're learning how to shift this in our consciousness, and we're learning how to be more cautious about the words that we say, and be more conscientious and understanding that what we say may actually be a reflection of ourselves. So I've had these experiences myself personally. I think we all have had, people gossip about us on some level. And, I've had it kind of happen to me on an extreme level. And it came to a head and to a point where, I understand where these people come from and why they said the things that they said at that time. And, I'm not innocent at that some point in my life. I probably have done the same thing. But it's coming to a point that we need to take responsibility for the things that we say, understanding that they might actually be a reflection of ourselves rather than the other person. And it's really important. This is what the whole Gemini new moon is healing at this time, because it's got Mercury in opposition to Saturn. And so that's where that kind of discipline and change is required. And it's also connected to Chiron at 2 degrees, which is the healing aspect. So this is what the communication and the shift is required to heal. And that's why it's so important for us to really take the leadership in knowing who we are as individuals. So when we speak about our own identity, we know who we are and we won't speak ill of others in the manner that we may have done in our collective human history for years. It's a big evolution in a social construct, and it's going to come, and it's coming quite quickly. I'm going to say it honestly. The energy influx for this particular um, message of healing, of what we say is a reflection of ourselves, not of others, is really coming to a head. And it's coming to a head for us individually, it's coming to a head for social organizations, and it's coming to a head globally. So it's really a time for us to heal this at a really core level and start to be consciously aware that our thoughts of other people may be a reflection of ourselves. And the second really, really important message about the healing and the intuitive analysis that I've received is that people are who kind of feel unable to shift in this manner. They might have attachments to a job or to a family group or to a friendship group that hasn't really evolved in this way yet. And they feel stuck and they feel like they can't really shift out of that kind of behavior, this pathological behavior. It's a maladaptive behavior that has been kind of recycling over and over. And the way for us to stop the behavior is to accept that we are all forgiven. You know, the Christ consciousness, the unity consciousness, the oneness that is really embodying the energy of our wholeness. And that's why we're mirroring each other, is understanding that we are all connected. And people who are having difficulty with understanding this Christ energy is because they're having a challenge of accepting forgiveness. They're having a challenge in understanding and believing that the universe, the cosmos, or God, or whatever you want to believe in, is actually going to provide them forgiveness. And so they recycle the energy and they repeat the maladaptive behaviors or patterns instead of just believing that they will receive forgiveness, because we are all already forgiven. But it's about returning to that inner childlike place, just like a child would when they make a mistake. You know, let's say like a boy steals his friend's bike, you know, when he was a kid, and his mom goes, "Did you steal Scott's bike yesterday?" And the little boy goes, "No, I didn't steal Scott's bike." And then it turns out that he did, and his mom's like, "Well, I know you stole it because so and so saw you down the street with his bike. So why are you?" And then the kid goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And it's in that surrendering and in that childlike surrender, there is this knowingness and acceptance that you will be forgiven. And that's typically the energy that people need to start to embody. So moving forward from this Gemini lesson of healing, it's really about, you know, if you said, and, you know, you did a little chitter chatter and gossip and said, you know, nasty things about other people, then you realize, wow, those are things really that are about me, that I need to heal myself. My ego, you know, went crazy and I said these things that aren't really true. It's really a time for us to embrace that surrendering feeling like a child would when they're confronted, and knowing that you will receive forgiveness like a child would. And that's that innocence. And it's part of it requires responsible action. So, yes, you are already forgiven, but you need to kind of take responsible action in surrendering into your forgiveness. So I hope that kind of makes sense for people to understand the the message that I'm sharing, and also in how to embody it. Because when I share these astrological updates, they also bring us a lot of messages of healing and how we can heal and what are the next steps in our ascension process. And this can be like a challenge for some people, and for some others, this can be like, oh my God, I totally understand what you mean. This is exactly what I've been going through, or XYZ. So it's really a time for us to embrace that innocence that we are already forgiven, and that sometimes God or the universe will calm the person rather than the storm. Okay. And there's that analogy again where, sometimes the universe will offer the person who's been quote unquote, the victim of this kind of gossip, um, will allow the person to be the forgiver, and the individual and the universe will work through the individual by allowing them to understand and calm them, and allowing them be a vehicle of forgiveness. And so that's like, how they calm the child instead of the storm, that's where that analogy comes in. And it's not about, let's push so and so aside because he's been victimized, and, we don't want to deal with him. Let's, I don't know, sedate him, put him away, nobody talk to him. No, it's actually allowing that individual to be the vehicle of offering the forgiveness. And then we don't recycle that old pathological pattern of our human condition. And that's how we can restore our innocence in a more productive way. And it requires responsible action. And it also requires trust. It requires that you trust the universe so much that you will receive forgiveness. That childhood trust of your own innocence needs to return. And I know this message can sound a little heavy, but before we get to the retrogrades and the eclipses at the end of the summer, I think this message is really, really important and key for people to understanding the importance of what you say about others, and how it is most likely a reflection of yourself, and to be really conscientious of that. Because, all in all, people wear, like, let's say people wear sunglasses over sunglasses over sunglasses. Ultimately, you're wearing like 3 sunglasses. And then, someone asks this individual for an opinion. Well, their opinion is going to be filtered through 3 lenses of their ego that hasn't been healed. And so that's how it's a reflection of themselves. And it doesn't really have any justice for anyone. And that kind of needs to heal. And that needs to come to an end. It needs to come to a conclusion. And this Gemini energy that's mirroring really is bringing this up for people in partnerships in people in their family life, in people in their society, like how society has treated like one individual, for example, or how a group has treated one person, or how a family dynamic is playing out. It's playing out in a whole different bunch of ways, but it's really about returning to that childlike innocence and expressing your authenticity and the truth of everything. And also expressing things when you've done something wrong or when you've lied, and knowing that you will receive forgiveness. It's really surrendering into that is really important right now. And that will shift the communication and uplift it to a higher level of consciousness. So, I can go on about this subject a little bit more than expected, but as an intuitive analysis and of a healing analysis of this new moon in Gemini for an astrological perspective, I think this is what it's showing us to heal at this time. And I think it's a time for all of us to kind of reflect on that topic and to come to some closures in our life if we need to take any responsible action for anything we may have said or have done wrong to another person, however best that we can. And, I hope this helps anyone on your journey. And I really wish everyone a lot of healing and loving blessings for this new moon in Gemini. And like always, please follow or share my page. And I wish you lots of love and blessings, and take care. Much love. As one we walk. Ciao.